inventors, authors, and futurists, Ray has been described as the ultimate thinking machine and the rightful heir to Thomas Edison, no less. Ray, I'm going to turn to you first and ask you, where do you think technology will take us in the next 5 to 10 years? I know I'm abusing of your sagacity and forward thinking, but if not you, then who else? How will it affect our lives? How will it affect the way we work, relate to each other, and so on and so forth?
Well, let me start with a broad perspective. You saw the Bill Gates quotes about how it's improving productivity, but then people are always challenging, how come we don't see the productivity gains in the productivity statistics? Well, the answer is we put the gains in the numerator and the denominator. When I spent $300 for this, that counted as $300 of economic activity, despite the fact that it's billions of dollars of computation and communication circa 1970, millions of dollars of information services. I saved up as a teenager thousands of dollars to buy an encyclopedia. That's one of thousands of free services. Now, as I go around the world, people actually think that things are getting worse. What's actually happening is our information about what's wrong in the world is getting exponentially better. I'll just cite a few statistics, because people are really unaware of this. And I'll cite a statistic about how people are unaware of it. Poverty in 1820, 94% worldwide. Today, it's 9.6%, reduction of 90%. And that doesn't count the massive purchasing power gains that I just cited. Average income in the United States, $1,800, $4.50 a day. In today's dollars, today it's $147. It's a 30-fold increase in constant dollars. Literacy worldwide, 12% in 1820, 85% today. So a 2016 survey of 26,000 people in 24 countries, only 13% knew that poverty had decreased at all in the last 20 years. Only 1% correctly answered that it had decreased by over 50%. Now, if I were a prescient futurist to 1900, I'd say, okay, 38% of you work in factories, 25% in factories, 38% on farms. That's 63% in factories and farms. Today, that's 2% on farms, 8.7% in factories, a total of 10.5%. That's a reduction of 6-fold. So people say, oh my God, I'm going to be out of work. I say, well, don't worry, you'll get jobs developing apps for mobile devices, websites, doing data analytics. Nobody would have any idea what I'm talking about. People say, so okay, we're destroying jobs at the bottom of the skill ladder, we're adding jobs at the top of the skill ladder, but are we actually adding as many jobs as we're destroying? Well, in 1900, we had 24 million jobs. Today, we have 142 million jobs. Okay, but the population has increased. Well, we've gone from 31% of the population to 44% of the population. Okay, but how do those new jobs compare to the ones we've destroyed? $1,900 per capita income in today's dollars, $6,000. Today, it's $56,000. So that's a 9-fold gain in constant dollars. Hours worked in 1900 was 3,000 per year. Now it's 1,800. That's a reduction of 40%. So we're actually earning 11 times as much in constant dollars per hour. We had 63,000 college students in 1870. We have 20 million today. We're spending 16 times as much in constant dollars per student in K through 12. And the last point I'll make is that this is the most peaceful time in human history. People say, what, are you kidding? Don't you pay attention to the news? There was just an incident last week, the week before that. Well, we rightfully get upset about incidents and wars that kill dozens, hundreds, thousands of people. I mean, just go back to World War II, 50 million people were killed, and that was the most peaceful century in human history up to that time. Your chance of being killed was dozens, and by some measures, hundreds of times greater centuries ago. Democratization, you could count the number of democracies a century ago on the fingers of one hand. You could count the number of democracies 2 centuries ago on the fingers of one finger. So we're making tremendous progress, but people are completely unaware of that. Yeah, I mean, railroads is the 19th century technology. That was our internet of the 19th century. Let me broaden the discussion again. I talked about the past, but let me talk about the future. I mean, we have 2 billion people connected today. That's clearly going to be 4, 5, 6 billion over the next 3, 4, 5 years. It's important how we get there, but one of the principles I like to talk about, which I call the law of accelerating returns, is that the price, performance, and capacity of information technology doubles every year. That goes back to the 1890 census, and it goes through thick and thin, through war and peace, through boom times and recessions. It went through the Great Depression. It went through the recent 2008 recession. It's basically a doubling of price performance per year. That's a multiplication of 1,000 in capability over a decade. And people say, well, that's great. You know, we got these really cool devices. You can access all these information surfaces, but you can't eat information technology. You can't wear it. You can't live in it. That's going to change also. All of these industries are going to be transformed by information technology. 3D printing will print out clothing in the 2020s. There'll be lots of cool open source designs you can download for free and print out for pennies per pound. There's a vertical agriculture revolution coming where we'll grow food, hydroponic plants for fruits and vegetables, in vitro cloning of meat in AI-controlled buildings at very low cost. Already in Asia, a building was put together, 3-story office building was put together in days, snapping together modules that could be printed out on a 3D printer, like Lego bricks. That's going to be the nature of construction as we go through the 2020s. It's going to revolutionize manufacturing. So we're going to transform every aspect of life. And another major phenomena, which you alluded to briefly, is that we're going to transform health and medicine. That didn't used to be in information technology. And I'm not just talking about computerizing medical records. I'm talking about the very basis of biology being understood as software, and we now have the means of reprogramming it. The enabling factor of that was the Genome Project, which was a perfect exponential. And we're now seeing clinical applications. We can fix a broken heart, not yet from romance. That'll take a few more developments in virtual reality. But from a heart attack, we can actually reprogram adult stem cells and fix a damaged heart. We're actually growing organs, kidneys, lungs, and hearts, and installing them successfully in primates. It's coming to a human near you in the next 5 to 10 years. 10 years from now, health and medicine will be radically transformed as we reprogram health and biology away from disease and away from aging. And these are going to be very rapid phenomena. Exponentials start out slowly, doubling tiny numbers, and then they get to the knee of the curve. And we're in that knee of the curve now in many different areas.
So you believe that fiscal spending by governments is going to significantly decrease in the health and benefits sector because the right investments will have been made?
Well, there are short-term issues where, because of proprietary technologies, certain medicines are very expensive at first.
Do you think that will change, or that we should think about changing these proprietary issues in the way we did at the time of trying to eliminate and certainly fight AIDS in various countries, where eventually the second generation medicine
It will ultimately change. You get to the 2030s, we'll have medical nanorobots that can overcome disease, that'll extend our immune system. Right now, our immune system doesn't go against cancer. It thinks, oh, that's me, because it didn't select for long life. We'll have these methodologies that can overcome most disease and aging processes in the 2030s, and ultimately they'll be like vaccines. I mean, do you have to be wealthy to get a vaccine today? And that protects you against many things. We're going to broaden that substantially. So we're going to actually make major gains in longevity, over the next 10, 15 years.
Christine, if I could just jump in for 1 second.
Sure.
The technology that Ray's talking about and my colleagues are talking about will be the easy part. Where this will break down is companies or countries or healthcare groups will not change the organization structure,
yes,
will not change the culture, the reward mechanism. They won't focus on speed of innovation. And I actually think Ray's numbers are conservative. I think you're going to see, when you have the processing capability and big data working together, it will be not Moore's Law every 18 months. It's going to be a much faster pace. But you've got to keep up with the organization change and the cultural change regardless of country.
Yeah, but we see that with a tremendous explosion of entrepreneurship, and I see that all around the world. I was in France and said, oh, our neighborhood is the Silicon Valley of Paris, and in China, our neighborhood's the Silicon Valley of Beijing. It's become a metaphor for a whole different way of organizing innovation. And we need to transform education, which is, I think, broken. The idea of stuffing facts in the kids' minds is an obsolete strategy. We carry these facts around. Really learn by doing, I think, is a key strategy. And even young children in elementary school, junior high school can take on world problems. They may succeed or they may fail, but they'll succeed at learning something.
If I can add just one thing.
Yeah, and then I ask Ilda
sure.
something.
You very boldly referred to patent law. I mean, I'm amazed that you did that. Thank you. You know, I think, frankly, there's a big part of this discussion that we could maybe have this in a separate panel, but technology is amoral, right? These forces are not, we have to guide these forces, right? All of this stuff will not lead to prosperity for everyone unless we choose to make it so. And it is very scary to me that we're not having some of these conversations. In a world of zero marginal cost software, where one person can create an innovation and own it, right? And require very few people to work for him or her to generate massive amounts of capital. That is a radical difference from the economy of the past, where if you wanted to amass lots of capital, you had to amass lots of workers because you needed lots of people to make stuff. Yeah. And now when making stuff is essentially free in this new zero marginal cost world, we have to revise our laws. We have to think about things like a basic income for the people who will inevitably be left behind. And I think a lot of that is going to fall on the heads of policymakers. And we have to remember that we shape technology, it doesn't shape us.
Yeah, but let's face it, there will be lots of vested interest, because the moment you start talking about revising those particular patent laws, intellectual property law, copyright law, and so on and so forth, you will be bumping into those who have been living with the 50 years post-death, or the 7 years, or the 20 years, depending on what device or what framework you're talking about. Yeah. And these people are not going to like it, but there is a huge discrepancy, I couldn't agree more with you, between the sort of time to entry and the time for protection. And there has to be a debate between private and public sectors on that.
This isn't the first time in human history we've automated jobs. This concern started in the textile industry in England in 1800 with the Luddite movement. We've been moving up Maslow's hierarchy, and we're redefining the nature of work. I mean, the idea of a job is really a means to an end. It's not an end to itself, and we're finding different ways of being productive. For example, in the United States, we have now 20 million college students and millions more who service them. So what are these 25 million people doing, which is 15% of the workforce? Well, they're studying poetry and art and science and music, which is now considered a useful thing to do. You've got new platforms where people are creating millions of apps and content for all of these new services, music, videos. These platforms didn't exist years ago. That's also considered useful work to do. A lot of this is actually not captured by the economic statistics. There are estimates that the informal economy has doubled from $1 to $2 trillion in the United States in the last 10 years. So we're redefining the nature of work. Work is actually becoming more gratifying. Go back a century ago, people were happy to get a backbreaking job to put family on their family's table. Today, people get a lot of their gratification and actualization from their work. I think we're going to redefine the nature of work. There's going to be plenty of material resources to go around for our biological population.
So Ray, do you think we need to measure better, and we need to invent new tools, new instruments, new theories?
Well, I do think we're not capturing a lot of the income from these new platforms.
We are not.
We're not. It's actually much easier for people to operate outside the economic system because of encryption and all of the informal means with which people make money, which is not captured. So people have noticed employment as a percentage of population has risen up until about a decade ago, and now it's down 1.9%. But what's not captured is a tremendous amount of activity on these platforms that didn't exist 6, 7 years ago.
But it also means we must, for the first time, move much quicker on education now. and not in the old world fashion of linear thinking to prepare for where the jobs will be, both by companies and others.
It's not the first time in history we've done that. How many jobs circa 1900 still exist today? We've continually eliminated jobs through automation. We have a tremendous explosion in the entrepreneurial sector, for example. When I started, there was 10 million, in 1974, there was $10 million of high-tech venture capital in the United States. Today, that's a small deal. And you've got entrepreneurship all over the world. People are finding new ways to be productive. And the economic statistics show more and more people are economically engaged, and average incomes are going up. And as I pointed out, the value of a dollar is increasing. Certainly it does in information services. We can clearly see that. But that's going to affect all of these other sectors as well. So money will go further.
Please.
Well, I think it's in the interest of everyone that everyone have purchasing power, or we won't have markets for people to excel at. We will be able to create the material resources for our whole population at very low cost, the kinds of fantastic gains we see where now billions of people can have these incredible information resources will also apply to creating buildings and food and clothing and other material things that we need. So we'll be able to provide for people's needs. We do have to ask basic questions. What do we want to do with our lives? Work can be gratifying and a source of self-actualization, but the idea of a job has partly been a means to an end to provide distribution of wealth, but we do want markets. We don't want high concentration of wealth, or we won't have markets to sell to. Just to throw in a quick point, I mean, the advice I give to young people I'm mentoring is to find your passion. It's an old sort of advice, but that should be your job, something that gives you pleasure, and then you won't want to retire. I like to say I retired when I was 5 because I decided I wanted to be an inventor. That's what I had a passion for, and so that's what I've done. Doesn't feel like work to me. That should be the nature of work, something that does give you meaning and actualization. In education, as I mentioned earlier, the model is broken. 8 years ago, I co-founded Singularity University, which is this symbol here, with Peter Diamandis of the X-Prize Foundation and Larry Page. And the idea, there were two ideas. One is to center on exponential thinking, this exponential growth that we talked about, but also learn by doing. And our recent class, we had 80 students from 40 countries, chosen from 3,000 applicants, and the students self-organize into teams of 3, 4, 5 students each and take on some world challenge that they decide on themselves. Clean water in Africa, cleaning up the environment, and set a goal of actually positively affecting 1 billion people within 10 years. And so many of these teams from years ago are well on their way to having a major impact. Whether they succeed or fail, they'll succeed at learning something. And just stuffing sort of information into kids' minds is obsolete. We now have the best teachers in the world online. Like I meet people all the time who are now experts in deep learning, which they learn from the best professors for free online. We will very soon have K through graduate school in many languages, free online. We really need to teach children and adults how to turn this knowledge into solutions in world problems. If I think about what little I've learned in my life, it's not been from formal schooling. It's been from my own projects.
Including failing.
Exactly. Mostly failing, so yeah.
Well, we owe you the scanner bed, don't we? Among other things.
The flatbed scanner.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned some of the progress we've made. We're moving up Maslow's hierarchy, but there are still people at the bottom who don't have access to clean water, don't have access to the internet. In fact, most of the world still doesn't. I think it's the IMF's unique role actually is to look after those people and get them internet access, get them clean water, get them basic medical services. I think that still has to be a priority. I think we will end up in a good place 10 years from now, but those 10 years are important. Beyond that, I think we can merge, as I mentioned, entrepreneurship and education, and we can even bring that into elementary school.
I agree.
And teach children how to actually use all these knowledge resources once they get access to them to solve real problems and learn something along the way. And some of them will actually succeed in solving those problems.
Thank you, Ray.